And we are back on the build phase. I'm Mr. Ben, and today we are going to talk about some card reveals. We actually have 2 weeks worth of card reveals that I'm going to go over today. And these are cards coming from the upcoming giant size edition Heroes of Krakoa. Now, I've said before on the show that my favorite corner of the Marvel Universe is not the X-Men corner. I don't hate on the X-Men. I'm not throwing any shade at the X-Men. Rogue is one of my favorite Marvel characters, but overall, the X-Men storylines have never been as appealing to me as, say, like Avengers or that kind of. That's just the Marvel comics I read growing up. Again, no hate on X-Men, and I'm sure the people who are big fans of X-Men are really excited to see this giant size issue coming out, as well as the Krakoa storyline is actually pretty cool. Again, I'm not the biggest X-Men fan, but this was a storyline that I definitely enjoyed. Uh, this is also the first giant size issue we've gotten since summer of 2021. I think Civil War Battles came out in June, so it's been quite a while since we've gotten a big box. I mean, to be fair, throughout 2022, we didn't get many cards at all. None of them were big boxes, so the level of excitement, both from the kind of card drought that we've been going through, but also the fact that we're getting a big infusion of, as much as I love the single issues and the price point and the new distribution model, there is something that's a lot more exciting about grabbing a 200 card box and having a lot of stuff to really sink your teeth into. Now, notably, this set is not called Krakoa Battles or using the word battles in any kind of way. And there was a Facebook comment where it seems like the battles designation is going to go away, that they're not going to continue using that on boxes. Okay. It is just marketing, but it does strike me as a little bit of a weird choice to have the Buffy battles, the X-Files battles, the Alien battles, the Civil War, like all of these battle boxes. And we as a community have said to many new players, oh, you're new, where do you start? Well, you got to get a battles box. And we're just going to kind of do away with that designation. Now, that's fine, whatever. Just seems like an odd choice at this point in the game's life, but it's not something I'm really going to get hung up on. So, before we dig into these new cards, I, of course, want to give some love to the patrons of the show. Without their support, I would not be able to bring the awesome content to you in the kind of way that I do. So, while I love all my patrons, I specifically want to shout out Brad, Jason, Justin, Patrick, Peter, Patrick, and Roland at our ProMat Eclipse level and above. And if you enjoy what we're doing here, patreon.com/thebuildphase. Okay, let's look at some cards. So last week we had some cards released on January 27th. Now, for anybody who is not familiar with important dates in my personal life, January 28th happens to be my birthday, and as such, I was off the clock. I was off the content creation hobby horse for several days over the course of last week and the weekend. But now we're back. We're going to deal with these cards that I missed last week, and then we're going to deal with this week's cards as well. So this article is called House of X, A New Era for Mutant Kind. The dawn of a new age for mutants has come to the Versus System 2 PCG. While traditionally a corner of Marvel history defined by ideological and social conflict as much as physical, it's the unification of heroes and villains alike in the pursuit of a greater place in the world that sets the stage for our Heroes of Krakoa arc. Leading the way is the House of X, our battles box, they use battles in quote marks there, our battles box that unites the more often at odds Brotherhood and X-Men into one 200 card package. What better show of unity is there than to show their leaders side by side? I have always enjoyed the value, the effort that Super Awesome Games puts into the value they place on flavor first. I think Danny, when I spoke to him directly about it, called it bottom up. Rather than coming up with game mechanics and then shoehorning them onto characters, they consume the content of the characters. They read the comics, they watch the movies, and then figure out the game mechanics that make sense, starting with theme first. And this type of approach, now it's not always that way, of course, but this type of approach does also kind of color, put some inflection onto how they write these card reveal articles, and it's something I've always appreciated from them. The little bit of pretentious, and it is a little bit, but I'm with it. I all the way, guys. Like, I love how they commit to the bit, so to speak. Okay, so let's look at these actual cards. We'll start with Professor X. He is X-Men affiliated, 165 with range. This is the depiction of Professor X where he's like wearing the Cerebro helmet like on his head. Not my favorite my favorite depiction of the character, but whatever. Dream worth having. This is a build phase yellow power. Reveal the top 4 cards of your deck. Put each X-Men and Brotherhood supporting character into your hand, then shuffle the rest back into your deck. So the first thing I noticed while I was reading that sentence is the word 4 rather than the word 5. If I recall, historically speaking, the professor or this type of mechanic, the pay a symbol, reveal a certain number of cards from the top of your deck and get one card, I believe went 5 deep. I'm trying to look up the original Professor right now. Original Professor X, pay a blue, reveal the top 5, put a character from among them. So this is taking the number of cards that you get to look at down to 4, but this is also allowing you to put every character card of the appropriate team affiliations, Brotherhood and X-Men, into your hand. So it's a little worse than other effects like this that we've seen before in that you're looking at fewer cards, but it's quite a bit better in that the upside of this, like you could potentially hit 2, 3, or even 4 cards off of this, and while you looked at 5 with the original Professor X, you're never going to get more than 1. So this is potentially a pay 1, draw 4 power. Looking at its power spike. I mean, yeah, I suppose its trough would be pay 1, get nothing. But I think if you're going to build this as your main character, making sure that you have at least 1 and often 2 or 3 with the occasional spike of 4 cards that you get to add to your hand, I don't think that's unreasonable. It's worth mentioning that in Versus we don't have a hand limit. So if you draw an extra 4 cards on turn 1, you don't have to deal with like discard penalties or anything like that. So this could potentially be pretty strong, and considering it's a build phase power, you can do it immediately. You could activate this a few times before you even have to say the words Jessica Jones. His level up condition is all mutant kind are welcome. It requires 4 experience points. When a Brotherhood or X-Men supporting character appears on your side, Professor X gains 1 XP. That's very straightforward. It makes sense for the like what this depiction of the character is trying to do. It's fine. That's fine. The stats of 1/6 are not very good, but he's Professor X, so having his attack stat be pretty low kind of makes sense. Are they going to show us the level 2 in this reel? Oh my god, Richard, you gotta stop showing me level 1s and not the level 2s. I cannot take this. Okay, so this seems like a perfectly reasonable level 1. There are, of course, going to be games where your draw just completely craps out and your dreams worth having aren't worth paying for, where your draw doesn't support his level up condition. But I think, especially if you build with a flood, like low to the ground type curve where you're going to have more 1s, 2s, and 3s than the typical deck, so you really focus this deck on being able to go wide rather than go tall with big single investments in characters, it feels like this Professor X could level up pretty quickly. Potentially turn like 2, 3. I guess 2 would probably be a little too early. Are there any X-Men characters that generate like Squirrel Girl style tokens when they come into play? Nothing's coming to mind immediately. So yeah, I think you're looking at probably a turn 3 level up with him. Perhaps there'd be some weird extenuating circumstance where you could level up sooner than that. But I think overall, if you recruit a 1-drop on 1, you recruit 2 1-drops on 2, then you're looking at turn 3 to finish up your level up. And some combination therein is probably what this guy's going to be doing. Moving over to Magneto. He is a 2/5/5 with flight and range. 2/5/5 is not a delightful stat block. I guess 1/6/5 isn't much better. 5 health has never been great, and it's even worse than it used to be as the game has evolved. So this is certainly something you have to acknowledge the drawbacks to the main character that you're going to play. You can't plug those holes. You can't work around those weaknesses if you don't acknowledge them. And 5 hit points on a main character is definitely something that in this era of the game I think is considered a drawback, a little bit of a weakness. His powers are, there are no sides. This is a build phase, pay a yellow, reveal the top 4 cards of your deck. All the same comments I had about the word 4. Put each Brotherhood and X-Men supporting character into your hand and shuffle the. Is that word for word the same as Professor X? Yeah, although and this is a super awesome games thing here. The flavor of with Professor X, the power is worded put each X-Men and Brotherhood. And with Magneto, the power is worded put each Brotherhood and X-Men supporting character in here. Little touches. It is a little disappointing to see two main characters in the same box coming out with basically the same power. Um, I suspect they're doing this on purpose. This is going to feel kind of like Iron Man, Captain America did in the Civil War, where they're kind of opposite sides of a similar coin. Although these two, and I'm going to guess his level up, Savior of Mutant Kind, level up 4. When a Brotherhood or X-Men supporting character appears on your side, Magneto gets XP. Okay, so same kind of comments about both. I should have read both cards together. Level up's probably going to be turn 3. Worst case scenario, like if things go really bad, probably couldn't level up later than turn 5. I mean, and at that point, you've already lost the game, I think. Like, if you are a 2/5/5 until turn 5, I don't think Magneto's going to survive, even with flight and range. Uh, one look at these two, quoting from the article again, one look at these two will show plenty of similarities this time around, showing just how much stronger mutant kind is when it comes together. Professor X and Magneto's different approaches will become apparent once they level up. Which I can't see how they're going to level up because Richard didn't give us the level 2s. Okay, honestly, this paragraph here, I think assuages some of my. I was going to nitpick a little about making two separate main characters having the exact same powers. Feels a little. I don't. I don't know the words I want to use because calling it something like low effort, I feel is totally unfair. That's not what they're doing here. At least I'm taking them at their word that once these guys level up, we'll see the differences in approaches. While it is a little, without seeing that level 2, it does make this feel a little maybe boring. Even that's maybe too strong. I'm not a huge fan of buying two different cards that do the exact same thing in the exact same way. So I'm going to put my faith in Super Awesome Games that the level 2s and potentially even level 3s, maybe, will give us enough divergence between these two main characters that the level 1 being the same is going to be totally okay. Even if game mechanically it's a little meh, flavor-wise it's going to work. That's my hot take. I'm putting in a prediction that Super Awesome Games is going to make good cards. That's where I'm at. With regard to the card art on Magneto, I like it quite a bit better than Professor X. I've been largely trying to avoid conversation about these cards because I wanted to be able to react to them in real time. But I did see one comment saying that the art chosen for Magneto is not from the appropriate era of X-Men comics. I wouldn't have known, I don't think, immediately. Like, that's not something I would have immediately noticed, even if I eventually thought of it. It's fine. I actually prefer the Magneto artwork because it's a little more dynamic. It is almost to the point of being busy, whereas Professor X, you have a clear view of the character, but it's a little meh, it's a little boring. Overall, both these cards are probably fine, although it's hard to really commit one way or the other, whether they're going to see competitive play, whether they're going to be fun kitchen table cards. I just don't know without knowing what the rest of the cards are. I'll just say Super Awesome Games is going to give us excellent kitchen table cards with these two main characters. Now watch, they're going to be super competitive. The contrast and duality comes up elsewhere, such as these two mutant loyalty locked plot twists. Okay, so we have Build It Up. This is... The art's fine. It's like a couple people planting flowers, whatever. Mutant Loyalty. So what does that mean? Put this card into your deck only if each card with a team and each character in your deck is Brotherhood and or X-Men. So if somebody's X-Men and another affiliation, like... Kitty Pryde can't go into your deck. She's a main character. But does that... I think they can still go in the deck even if they have an extra team affiliation. Although, was there a change made around this? I'm going to have to double check on exactly how mutant loyalty works with the team checks. I think... So unaffiliated characters are out. because they have nothing. But I think a character that has Brotherhood plus something else would still be legal, or X-Men plus something else would still be legal. I think, but again, double check me on that before you bring this card to a tournament. Build phase, turn 2 face down basic locations with different names on your side face up. So this is basically a build a better world, which is a plot twist that saw fringe play. It was very important in certain decks. I guess for people who haven't been around since the early days of Versus, Build a Better World has not seen a lot of play in recent years, but this was an A-Force affiliated plot twist. I'm actually going to have to... What it lets you do is turn a location face up, but it's been so long since I put it in a deck, I don't want to misquote it. I believe it excludes... Yes, it excludes any kind of special location. So main phase, turn one of your basic locations face up, or any combat, turn one of your basic face down basic locations face up. So Build a Better World was a plot twist that not only let you reuse important superpowers, it enabled you to use locations and then also have them available later for some kind of combo, and you could do it with the combat part kind of in a tricksy way where your opponent attacks your Luke Cage thinking you don't have a green, and then, oh, I'm going to reuse this green. So this plot twist saw a fair amount of play. Again, it wasn't widespread in the way that Shock to the System or something like that was, but in the decks that were really resource heavy, really resource hungry, this card, the 6-drop Iron Man from the base set, these were cards that saw a lot of play in the early days of Versus, less so recently. This Build It Up plot twist is strictly better. Oh, interesting. So when I looked up Build a Better World, the words basic and location are both capitalized, but on Build It Up, basic and location are not capitalized. Huh. I wonder what the formatting change, what that was about. Because basic is an actual designation. It seems like it would be a proper noun that would need to be capitalized. Okay, well, setting that aside, you get 2 face-down basic locations. They have to have different names, so you're not going to be able to necessarily reinforce the use of one superpower unless it's one of those funny ones that has multiple different colors you can pay for it. It does cost you a card, so you're getting back a resource in your row. You're paying a whole card for that. So net, you're going to be up. You're going to get 2 cards in your row back, but I don't think a face-up resource in your row is necessarily worth a whole card. It is worth something, though. It is and it is kind of dependent on what that resource is eventually going to be spent on, which does make it a little hard to just in a one-to-one way reevaluate this or evaluate this. So Build It Up. So I don't think this is probably generally great. You're limited on what teams you're allowed to put in your deck because of it, and you're going to be limited on the like if you could flip special locations like wildcard locations face up, this would be very, very strong. This is held back in a couple of fundamental ways, and we've seen how ridiculous cards that let you flip up resources wantonly like Monarch can be in play. So I'm kind of divided. I think there's going to be decks that want this effect. There's going to be really superpower hungry decks that are going to need those locations. And in those decks, this card is probably going to see play. But it's only ever going to be decks that are probably coming from within this arc primarily. A lot of the early Brotherhood cards were not that strong. A lot of the early X-Men cards, there were some good ones. I'm not flushing both of these teams down the toilet. But they came out at a point in the game where the power curve was just a little bit different, and a lot of the stuff in the original core box has been kind of outclassed. It's not true of everything, of course. Cards like Think Again still kind of stand out. Even the Odds was one of the best cards in the game for a long time. The first Brotherhood, I think the Brotherhood pack was the second ever issue we got in the new, can we call it the new distribution model at this point? In the distribution model that we currently have been living under for years. I think the Brotherhood pack was the second one that came out, and it's just been a long time. The game has changed, it's evolved. A lot of these cards are not as good as they used to be. So I suspect that's not fair. The cards are fine, but the game isn't what it used to be, and therefore cards that were fine in 2017 are not fine in 2023. So overall, I think most likely, if you're building an X-Men Brotherhood deck, you're probably going to be using a lot of the cards from this Krakoa box, this arc, and therefore I don't totally know what types of characters are going to be available and how superpower hungry those characters are going to be. I suspect this card is going to see some play, but it's hard for me to tell if it's going to just be kind of a fringe play that's seen every once in a while in very specific decks, or if it's going if the let me put it this way: if the cards in this arc give Brotherhood and X-Men the kind of treatment that the Symbiote team got in the Venom Carnage Maximum Carnage arc, then I think we're going to see this card for sure. If it's more along the lines with the Civil War characters, where there were some superpowers, but there was a lot more focus on keywords and kind of simplicity in that arc. If that's the kind of Brotherhood and X-Men cards that we get are going to be more like pro and anti-reg, then I think the utility of this card goes down significantly. That was a lot of words for one card. All right, Burn It Down. This card art I like a lot. It's dynamic, it looks cool, the colors, particularly the way the red kind of fades into the ash above the building that's burning here with the blue plot twist banner across the top. I like this card art a great deal. Mutant Loyalty, so all the same comments about Brotherhood and X-Men card. Does this do the switcheroo thing? No. Okay, so the Build It Up plot twist says each character in your deck is Brotherhood or X-Men in that order, and the Brotherhood plot twist checks for Brotherhood or X-Men in that order. So they did this flavor thing with Professor X and Magneto, and they didn't even carry it down to the plot twist. The OCD in me is screaming. Build phase, turn 2 enemy basic locations with different names face down. I think this is going to see play. I think the disruption. Wow. So the only other card that immediately comes to mind that does kind of a similar thing that I remember is, I believe it's San Francisco. And San Francisco is a location, so you had to put it in your row and then flip San Francisco plus a blue to be able to nuke 2 locations that your enemy had. And San Francisco, while it wasn't widespread play in the decks that wanted it, and specifically the decks that packed it to target specific things, it saw use. And this is a much better San Francisco. You're paying 1 card to deny your enemy 2 superpower activations, as opposed to paying 2 cards to deny your opponent 2 superpower activations. This, to me, seems the stronger of the two, although I fully concede there are going to be decks that are going to be superpower dependent enough that you will want Build It Up. I think Burn It Down is much more generally useful. Let me actually qualify that. If we end up seeing a Krakoa arc that is more like Civil War battles, so less overall superpowers are needed, a lot more focus on keywords, then the utility of Burn It Down goes down significantly, I think. So it's going to be a little bit meta dependent. What's the best stuff in the meta? Is it going to be really photographic heavy? Well, a lot of photographic stuff doesn't rely on superpowers. It relies on really strong keywords. Maybe this card is much less good in that meta. So I can imagine metas where Burn It Down does not see a lot of play just due to the types of things people are trying to do within that. Build It Up is going to require your deck to be a certain kind of way, and Burn It Down is going to require the meta to be a certain kind of way. But both of these cards, I think, have the ability for better than fringe. I'll say this. I think Build It Up is going to be fringe play in very specific decks, and Burn It Down is going to be widespread in very specific metas. That's kind of my take on these 2 cards initially. We're also going to be getting, because this is a battle set, well, here, let me just read the rest of this. Whichever side you were on before, there's finally something worth standing up for together. A home. Stay tuned for more House of X cards as we head into the new Genesis for all who call Krakoa home. Okay. We also see the Academy and the Laboratory versions that we're getting here. These cards are the same basic locations that we've always seen. Incidentally, on the basic location cards, they do have new art, which is good. I really like when they give us new art. Unfortunately, for me personally, while this art does look cool, I'm not the biggest X-Men fan, so the locations depicted are not stuff that I'm super excited about, but whatever. That's like the most trivial analysis is the card art. So, okay. To sum up these first 6 cards that were revealed from this arc, The two main characters, it's really impossible for me to perform any kind of intelligent analysis on them at this point. Given what I know about them based on here, it's a fine foundation. I don't mind, although I could see criticism being made of making the two cards basically the same. But again, I have some faith in Super Awesome Games that they're going to keep their word with regard to what's in the reveal article and give us divergent second level characters that make this feel thematically appropriate. The two plot twists, I think they're both probably going to see play as long as certain conditions are met. Moving on to the next set of House of X card reveals. This article came out on February 1st, yesterday, and this is called Followers and Family. Welcome back to Krakoa, and more specifically, Versus System 2 PCG House of X. Two of Mutantkind's leaders were the main focus of our last preview, but this time it's the Brotherhood taking point. Some of Magneto's most loyal followers and the X-Men's most recurring enemies are here to show you what they've got, ranging from the lowest lows to unstoppable heights. All right, we've got 7. Whoa. Is this... What? Sorry, I scrolled down and the last card in this reveal threw me for a little bit of a loop. Okay, so starting off, we have Toad. This is a level 1 main character. The card art is upsetting. So as much as I really wish they gave us artist credit on the card, the place I want to see artist credit is down at the bottom. Looking at Toad specific, there's the collector number, HOX009, there's the Marvel logo, there's the copyright for Upper Deck and Marvel. Right next to it, there's this blank spot where it could say illustrator credit and give us the artist credit, and it does not. And I wish it did. I have always wished it did. And shout out to Deconstruct the Universe for doing so much of the art sourcing and giving these artists their due. I say all of that because the artist's signature is taking up like 10% of the art panel. Like in the way that Photographic Universe cards have a giant logo plastered across the bottom of it, and it's really ugly. This card has an artist signature that was clearly added after the fact. It's not woven into the artwork in some kind of clever way. Again, I'm a full supporter in artists getting credit for their work. I do not like the way this has a big ol' RB... I can't even read the name. All I can see is like the logo slapped into the corner of the art. It also kind of, like, I get that Toad's position, his arms are kind of, his shoulders are rolled forward and his hands are probably down next to his feet with his knees spread, but it kind of makes it look like he has no arms. So a little bit of a fail on the card art for this guy, in my opinion. 075 is not a stat block I like at all. I'm not a fan of main characters, generally speaking, that have 0 attack. Even 1 attack is better than 0. In fact, it's infinitely better mathematically speaking. But let's see what he can do. Prehensile Tongue, main phase, pay a red. Toad has range and +7 attack this turn. Okay. Now we're talking about something. So you pay a skill location, and now he can shoot from the back row, and he's fighting as a 7/7. 7/7 is a great stat block on turn 1, and he can do this on turn... It's a great stat block all the way up to like turn 4. It's still overpowered. Even on turn 5, 7/7 is not terrible. So that's really, really strong, assuming you are able to hit those red locations. His level up is Live to Serve, level up 10, which is a big number, but let's see what he has to do. When a character appears on your side, Toad gains XP equal to how much more attack it has than Toad. So depending upon how important your level up is to you, and maybe there's a build for this guy where you don't care about leveling him up, where you focus on the fact that you can turn him into a 7/7, and by the time the board develops to the point where 7/7 is being outclassed, you've got your 3, 4, 5, 6 drops in play, and you can hide Toad in the back row. Maybe some of them are flyers, and you don't really have to worry about it. So there is a world where you just kind of build a strong mid-range curve, and Toad is your beat stick early game, and then by the time your board develops, you can hide him in the back. I could see that happening. On the other hand, if his level 2 is really good, or if the type of play pattern I'm describing doesn't work out, or there aren't the cards there to support it, and you have to actually level this guy up, well, that does change things a little bit because now you're being forced into playing kind of a specific suite of characters. And the thing you're checking on those characters is less, does this character synergize with my whole team? It's what is the yellow number in the lower left-hand corner of this character. So this reminds me of trying to build a deck around Photographic Red Skull, where you really need to play characters that have high attack, even if they're maybe not, I'm looking at you, creature from the Black Bog, even if they're not that great, you might just have to put them in because you want those 6 experience points on turn 3 or whatever. Again, the fact that you can give him range and that he has 7 defense, I think he's going to be pretty durable for the first few turns. And then about the time once the opponent starts getting ready to crack him every turn with ease, you can tuck him in the back row. So I don't think you're going to be under huge amounts of pressure to run characters just based on their attack. But I don't know what the rest of this box is going to hold. So his level up seems a little... I could see it going a couple ways, obviously. We don't know what we get from him because we don't have a level 2 Toad next. We have a level 2 Juggernaut. And this art looks so goofy. I don't know. I don't know what Kane has picked up, but he looks delighted to have it, and the proportions just don't look right to me. I wonder if maybe the full art panel would make him look a little less... Something about his shoulders and arms just does not look proportional in this artwork. Not a fan of this art. But let's see what I think about the rest of the... Oh my god, I see the infinity symbol on here. So he becomes a 5/10 at level 2. I have no idea what his level 1 is. And if you guys remember, the old Juggernaut was actually a pretty good aggro main character for the brief window of time where we had him and hadn't yet gotten our hands on Rogue. Speaking of Rogue, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Mutant Loyalty. Put this in your deck only if each card with a team character in your deck is Brotherhood or X-Men. What happened to Resistance? Resistance is all mutants. What? They're like, we don't want people to want to play with Rogue anymore. That thematically, I don't get that. Maybe there's again, I'm not the biggest X-Men aficionado in the world, so maybe there's a thematic reason why during the Krakoa arc, the Resistance mutants aren't considered mutants. Maybe there's a mechanical reason why Super Awesome Games didn't want to grandfather in the Resistance team into Mutant Loyalty as well. But that feels a little bad. Like, maybe don't call it Mutant Loyalty. Maybe call it, like, Mutant Unity. So that way you're saying it's this specific Brotherhood and X-Men teams, like, from this specific moment in time. Mutant Loyalty sounds to me, now that I'm thinking about it, like it should include everybody who's a mutant. But it doesn't. Weird. Okay. At level 2, Juggernaut has main phase. It's called Invulnerable. Pay a green. Juggernaut can't be stunned or wounded this turn. Oh my god. Let me look up the original Juggernaut. So the original Juggernaut was Brotherhood. He started at a 5/5 and became an 8/8. Didn't have... I thought he had something that made it so he couldn't be stunned. No, I guess it was his level up. He just had to survive the attack. So this guy doesn't necessarily have to survive attacks, but he can survive attacks through paying a green, which is objectively better than the other Juggernaut, I think. Limitless Strength, main phase, pay 2 red. Juggernaut has infinity attack from the rest of the game. I don't know, man. Infinity is a big number. Yeah, so Infinity is obviously Infinity attack is really good. I have no idea what you have to do to get to this level 2. His level up condition could be like seeing Archangel. Might be a card you're never ever going to see. Or level 2 Daredevil. You might just never ever see this card anywhere other than your binder or sitting off to the side while somebody gets sad while they slowly lose a game. I'm going to hope that's not the case. Given the number of cards Super Awesome Games has created, they've got a long history, a large library of successes and I don't want to say failures. Successes and lesser successes. So hopefully they did not give us this juicy new Juggernaut level 2 without a level upable Juggernaut level 1. But I have no idea. I really can't analyze this level 2 in any kind of serious. As a card, if this card gets onto the board, the words on this card, the stats on this card are good. But I don't know what you have to do to get it. So I don't know if you're ever going to see it. I just, man, these reveal articles where we only get half a main character make it really hard to do my job. It's not just followers. Again, quoting from the article, it's not just followers. Naturally, family is welcome at this mutant paradise. Okay, so Quicksilver, 2 cost. Not super impressed with this art, but it's fine. He is Brotherhood affiliated, 5/2. This kind of guy you'd play with Toad. 1 health. Out of nowhere, when you recruit Quicksilver, you may remove him from the game. If you do, starting on your next turn, during any of your recruit steps, you may put him onto your side. Okay, now notice this says when you recruit, and this is really important. This does not mean he appears, because Toad checks for when a card appears, right? Yes. So if you play Quicksilver, the recruit trigger, like I am recruiting Quicksilver, this is when things like uniqueness check. This is going to trigger before he actually enters play. The phrase that's been thrown around within the community, although I'm not sure this is an official versus term, is the resolving zone. So when you play a card, there's like a step where it's kind of in limbo before it actually enters play. And that's where this out of nowhere power checks. So you will not be able to play Quicksilver, get the 5 XP on Toad, then remove him from play, then bring him back in and get all 10 of your XP on the back of this one card. You will not be able to do that. But what this card does, what I think is really cool, is you can invest those recruit points now, you put him out of play, your opponent has no ability to interact with this guy, and then on the turn when you know you're going to want an extra +5 on that team attack, or where you know you're going to need a team attack to trigger some kind of other ability. Like I'm thinking the photographic 6-drop Bucky that we recently got. Now, obviously, you're not going to be team attacking Quicksilver with a photographic card under normal circumstances, but there are other cards that benefit from team attacks, and maybe getting to the point where you have enough characters in play to do the team attack could be a thing that could be problematic. This is a card that lets you do that. This is also a card that you can kind of just have hovering over there, and on any turn when you need to be able to fire off 5 attack to clear out something annoying, you bring in this guy, he's uninteractable, your opponent can't clear him, they can't deny you the ability to have it, and then all of a sudden, boom, I have an extra 5 attack attacker, or boom, I have this guy that I'm now going to sacrifice to the 8-drop Thanos instead of these other more important characters. I see a lot of utility, and this is just the surface level analysis. I think this is a kind of a toolbox card that's going to show up in a bunch of decks. This is an evil team affiliation, so it's worth mentioning that when he comes into play, if you've got something like Praetor in play, he's going to be a 7 attack instead. That feels really good. You pay 2 recruit points, and then on turn 4, you get to throw this guy out, and he has 7 attack on turn 4. I like that. Let's see what Scarlet Witch does. I really, really like the Scarlet Witch art. While you can't see her super well, and her hand does look a little bit like it's detached from her body due to the like special effects of her chaos magic, the texturing and the colors on the chaos magic totally, it erases any critique I would have about any other part of the card art. I love how that looks. This is the character doing what we want to see them do. I think this, artistic wise, this card is fantastic. So this is a Brotherhood affiliated 4-drop. She has range. She has 7/4/1, 7 attack on turn 4. Feels pretty good. Change probability. As a combat with Scarlet Witch resolves, flip a coin. No, not coin flip mechanics. No. All right, I will begrudgingly admit that coin flip mechanics kind of feel thematically appropriate for a character that messes with probability. This is a power that says change probability. But I do not like coin flip mechanics. Okay, well, what does it do? As a combat with Scarlet Witch resolve. So this is going to be while she's attacking and while she's defending. Flip a coin for each enemy character who would strike. For each one who loses the flip, they can't strike this combat. So you have a 50-50 chance of essentially you attack me and I flip a coin, and instead of getting to attack me, you probably just get your guy stunned because I have 7 attack. That's gross. I don't think you can rely on this. I think this is kind of reminiscent of the 5 drop Domino, who also had a coin flip mechanic. Um, I think Domino's was a little bit, maybe a little bit stronger overall because it allowed her to like stun 20 defense characters or whatever. This one is definitely defensive both on the attack and on the defense. Uh, this is probably going to see play. This seems good. This seems quite good. Uh, this is the kind of card that I'm going to play against it, and my opponent is going to hit the flip every time and tear me up. And then when I play with it, I'm going to miss the flip every time and be really upset. I predict this card is going to upset me. Overall, as much as I dislike flipping coins as part of my card game mechanics, thematically this does kind of feel appropriate with the character. I can't deny that. And 7 attack on turn 4 is quite good. Even if this card was blank, 7 attack on turn 4 is quite good. Okay, that's not totally true. 7/4 with range blank on turn 4 is much less good. Back to the article. Though this dawning of the age of Homo Superior is an idyllic one, that doesn't mean there aren't shows of force to be made when necessary. So we have the Silver Samurai card art. His card art looks to me like it was taken off the cover of a comic, because you've got the samurai attacking. You can see a tiny bit of Wolverine's face in the lower corner, and then there's some kind of what looks to me like traditional or historic Asian artwork in the background. So just based on the feel of this, I think this came off a comic book cover. Overall, it's pretty cool looking art. You don't have a good look at the Silver Samurai's face, but he's doing cool stuff and looks like a tough guy. Overall, I do really like the way this art looks on this card. So he's a 6-cost Brotherhood affiliated, 8/7/2. He has 8/7/2. Those are pretty decent stats for turn 6. Kind of well-rounded. Like, he's not fantastic in any one department. He doesn't have awesome attack. He doesn't have awesome defense. But altogether, 8/7/2 that's nice and solid. Master Strategist. When the Silver Samurai appears, you may move an enemy character to its front or back row. That is potentially game-winning. If you can pull somebody's main character up from the back row, or move their flying defender into the back row so you can just take shots at everybody, that is a strong power. Now, it's going to be less strong against like a Sentinel deck where they have a bajillion dudes out. But generally speaking, particularly against other mid-range decks, being able to mess with even one character in your opponent's format can sometimes be game deciding. He also has Combat Master. When Silver Samurai is in combat, enemy players can't play Plot Twist. This is one of the best keywords in the entire game. Combat Master is fantastic. It is a highlight of almost every single card that it's on. This seems like maybe not flashy, but a generally very solid 6-drop. Next up, we have Fierce Pierce. Wow, that Pierce sure is fierce. This is any combat plot twist. The artwork depicts Wolverine and Sabretooth fighting. It's fine. It's cool. Like, it's dynamic. They're doing stuff. You can see Rogue and Storm in the background. Looks like Storm's kicking somebody in the face, although I can't totally see who. Toad, maybe. There's a lot going on, but you can still see the two main figures in the front of it. I like this card. The artwork, anyway. Any combat. If this is a melee combat, choose a character on your side to get Ferocious and +2 attack. As a reminder, Ferocious means you strike before enemy characters. It's also called First Strike if you're coming from the Magic background. Ferocious +2 combat is pretty good. It is Brotherhood stamped, so you'll need to have a Brotherhood character out there to be able to use it. But generally speaking, this is basically cover fire, or not cover fire, open fire. Cover fire was a plot twist from old verses. This is basically open fire plus. So it's team stamped, which is a little bit of a restriction on it, but Ferocious and 2 attack. Isn't there a... Hold on. If I remember correctly, Vigilante Justice is a Guardians team stamp plot twist that just gives Ferocious. So this is a direct, just power creep version of Vigilante Justice. It is just strictly better in every possible way. Both cards are team stamped, and both grant Ferocious. The difference is Fierce Pierce grants Ferocious plus the 2 attack, whereas Open Fire is a generic plot twist that gives plus 2 attack. Yeah, so this is Open Fire plus Vigilante Justice, and it only costs 1 card. So that is to me a clear example of some power creep. But frankly, for a team like Brotherhood, let's get creepy. Let's give these guys some more stuff. This is a team that has never really risen to the top in any meta. Their cards have always, with the, I guess maybe the exception of Juggernaut. But even Juggernaut was only looked at as like the belle of the ball up until Resistance Rogue came out. So yeah, let's give Brotherhood some new tools. We've been asking from one of my biggest criticisms of the, I think it was Crossover 3, the crossover where they kind of changed what crossover was going to be and turned it more into like, here's extra game modes and here's boss cards, and rather than the first couple where we just got cards that supported teams that could use some support. One of my biggest reasons for criticizing that was because of Brotherhood as a team. It was Brotherhood needs help. Let's give this team some help. And I'm not a mutant fan. Like, this is not my favorite corner of the Marvel universe, but I don't like the idea that there's whole team affiliations that are just kind of like rotting on the vine. If teams are feeling rough, let's give them some support. The final card, or I guess there's a few more words here to quote from the article. Of course, even with Krakoa as a haven for all, that doesn't mean there can't be a more private sanctuary. Then we have Asteroid M, which is a wildcard location for Brotherhood characters. That's it from Magneto's half of the equation, leaving Charles to close out this first portion of our Heroes of Krakoa arc. See you next time. To me, my X-Men. Okay, so Asteroid M. Now, this is what caught my attention at the start of the article. So in the original Brotherhood release, collector number BOM019, we have Asteroid M, special location, Brotherhood affiliated, generate a blue, yellow, green, or red for a Brotherhood character on your side. And in this new box, we have Asteroid M. I guess technically this one says special location. The original one from back in the day just says location. It doesn't say special location because I don't think they had that designation at the time. It's a different art, but it's the same card. I'm not crazy about this. Does this mean we're going to see a reprint of Xavier's School for Gifted Mutants? I think this is a necessary evil, but I do think it sucks a little bit. That means 8 slots in this box are going to be devoted. So anytime we have a giant size issue, there's always some number of slots that are devoted to reprinting location cards that we all have 10,000 of. And the reason we have to do that is for the new players who this is their first ever experience picking up Versus. They have to be able to go into their store, buy whatever, like buy something new that gives them everything they need to play. It can't be like if you buy a 55 card pack, there's no locations in that. But it says on it that, hey, you're going to need other stuff to play it. The giant size issues are designed to be plug and play. You pick up and you go. So me and you can split the cost and then we can play with the heroes that we like. And that's been really good for things like Buffy and X-Files, and I think it's going to be great once the Mortal Kombat set comes out. There's going to be people who might not be invested in the overall universe of Versus. They might not even care about Marvel, but they want to be able to play this game using the characters that they like. So while it is a little hard for me, as somebody who wants all the new cards, especially after this card drought that we've had, as somebody who wants all the new cards, I am not the biggest fan in the world of seeing slots in our expansions devoted to reprinting location cards, but as somebody who wants this game to succeed, I'm willing to go along with it because, hey, we need new players. We need new blood. We need more people buying the product in order to continue to make it profitable for Upper Deck, Super Awesome Games. If these guys can't sell the cards, then we don't have our game anymore. So I get it. There's a little bit of a push-pull between making the game accessible and maximizing all the goodies and new toys for us experienced players. This is, to my knowledge, the first time we've ever seen a direct reprint of any card. And I'm going to have to guess that if Asteroid M is getting a reprint, we're going to get a reprint of the School for Gifted Youth, or I don't remember exactly, Xavier's Mansion. That's 8 slots that aren't something else. And I guess we have to do it as these older sets start to get harder and harder to find, particularly... Now, the core base set is still not exactly hard to find, probably because they had to go back and reprint it with all the damaged cards in the initial run. But a lot of those other older sets, like the first appearance of Brotherhood, the box that you get Asteroid M in, those are starting to get hard to find. Now, I don't play Marvel Legendary, but I pay enough of attention to that community to know that, like, the Fantastic Four box, for example, they went 10 years without a reprint, and that thing was impossible to find. So when the reprint was announced, everybody was really excited. What it seems like they're going to do here is, rather than go back and send old expansions back to presses, they're going to start reprinting staples. Now, as somebody who's bought every expansion of Versus, most of them twice, some of them as many as 3 or 4 times, this is not a move I can be excited about for myself. I don't need more copies of Xavier's School. I don't need more copies of Asteroid M. But I have to concede, for the people who are newer, who maybe don't want to go buy those older expansions, they just want to get the box and go, I guess maybe this is necessary. That's tough, though. That is certainly a move that is all about new player acquisition, to the admittedly mild, this is mild, detriment of established players. And maybe there's some people who only buy one copy of each set, and they're looking forward to having the extra Asteroid M's and Xavier's Mansions. That could be possible. I don't deny the existence of people who like reprints. Honestly, if they gave us a reprint of just wildcard locations for a bunch of the teams that had different unique art, maybe full art wildcard locations for A-Force, for Avengers, like all that, but it's like a prestige form. So in old Versus, they had a thing called gallery packs. And gallery packs were a premium product, so they were more expensive, and I think there were fewer cards than regular packs of Versus. But every card in the pack was full art or extended art, depending on which term you like. If they did something like that, where I could get full art versions of all, maybe not all, they probably have to divvy it up, like these locations, here's Avengers, maybe even by set, but if they did some way of taking older teams, like I think we're going to run into this problem with like Sinister Six and Spider Friends, because that arc sold well enough that it's actually sold out and is not going to be reprinted. So they're either going to have to reprint those wildcard locations in something, which it seems like what they're doing here with Brotherhood and X-Men, or they're going to have to find another way to get those cards into the public's hands or allow proxies. But I can't imagine they would ever allow proxies in a tournament situation. That being said, if you're somebody who wants to play in a tournament and you can't because there's an out-of-print product that contains a key card, that sucks too. So I don't necessarily have the perfect answer here. Overall, I like to see new cards in my new card expansions and not reprints. But if this is what's necessary to keep the game surviving and thriving, I guess as an established player, I will complain a little bit and then bite this bullet. So to review these cards, Toad is kind of interesting. It's hard to know where he's going, but I do think there could potentially be a build where you don't even have to care where he's going because you don't level him up. The level 2 Juggernaut seems extremely powerful, very good, but I don't know what you have to do to get him, so it's hard for me to evaluate that as well. Quicksilver, I think, is going to be a general use utility card across a bunch of archetypes. Certainly, a lot of aggro decks would benefit from being able to tuck 5 attack off to the side until they need it. Scarlet Witch seems good just on the basis of her stats, but could also potentially have these like upside spikes where she gets to essentially attack with in good hands every time, which is ridiculous. Silver Samurai seems like a solid 6-drop. I mean, there probably are other 6-drops who generally push the power level a little bit more than this guy, but if you're on Brotherhood, this guy seems like a very solid option. Fierce Pierce is a strict upgrade from other plot twists that have been printed in the history of the game. While it is restricted to the Brotherhood team, which is a team that has historically suffered, I think we can probably predict that Brotherhood is getting a major power boost within this set, and therefore Fierce Pierce is almost certainly going to see play. Asteroid M, not a huge fan of reprints, but if it's necessary to keep the game accessible to new players, I understand, and I sort of accept that as the cost of doing business. I want the game to survive. If that means every once in a while we have to do something that isn't ideal for us established players, but makes it more hospitable for new players, that is an exchange I am willing to make for sure. So overall, looking at these two spoiler articles back to back, I feel pretty positive about this expansion. It's hard for me to get that excited about X-Men just because I'm not the biggest X-Men fan. But mechanically speaking, these cards are all doing things for the most part that, well, okay, I don't really like coin flips, but there's still most of these cards, with the exception of Scarlet Witch, these cards are doing things that are generally interesting. I am really curious to see the Professor X and Magneto level twos for sure. Really, all of the main characters. I want to know what the other half of them is so I can actually analyze these cards with some semblance of certainty. Overall, very excited for this. It's been way too long since we've seen some new versus cards hit the shelves, and I can't wait for it. So this has been the build phase. I'm Mr. Ben. If you like what we're doing here, patreon.com/the build phase. Go win some games.